could have happened.
We depart from Pat Buchanan for a moment here. Neil Ferguson has a book and a PBS television series of the same name, The War of the World. Ferguson stresses, here's the list here, American soldiers, this is based on the first installment of the series, American soldiers sometimes executed prisoners, as surely as did the Germans and especially the Japanese. The destruction by the Allies of Dresden, Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki resembles a lot the terror bombing that the Germans inflict on London and other cities. Churchill and FDR hail Joseph Stalin as an irreplaceable ally. Joseph Stalin is, of course, a mass murderer. Now, listen to two quotations. Neil Ferguson, quote, "The Allies adopted the most brutal tactics of those they were fighting," close quote. Rush Limbaugh, I direct this one to you in particular, Christopher, quote, "Now we've got this revisionist historian trying to say we're no better than the people we beat because we were using the same totalitarian tactics. This is a latest example of the attempt to convince as many Americans as possible that the United States is no better than any of the worst despots and mass murderers that have ever lived. Thank you, PBS." Close quote. So who are you with on that one, Christopher? Rush Limbaugh or Neil Ferguson?
Mr. Limbaugh was very flattering about my good self in the New York Times last Sunday. So I
yes,
suppose
he was actually.
I suppose I owe him one. Actually, he somehow, try as he may, he could never find my G-spot. I don't understand why people admire him. I just don't get it. No.
Oh, well,
I can't,
we'll have a drink
just
on that
can't
one
get it. But anyway, if I haven't had the advantage of reading Mr. Ferguson's book, I'm an admirer of his work in general. The difference, I suppose, would be this. Germany and Japan in defeat were very expensively and carefully nourished back to life and health and democracy and prosperity. I don't think that would have been the case for a German-occupied Russia or German-occupied United Kingdom. And I think I'd rest my case on that distinction.
And we know what happened in the Japanese-occupied Manchuria.
Yes.
Right.
The difference is that in all war there's a process of brutality, and it becomes worse and worse. Every party to a war, no matter whether a liberal democratic government or an autocracy, will find themselves caught in that spiral, in that descent into barbarity. But the difference between the Allies and Germany and Japan was twofold. Number one, atrocity was incidental. It was not essential to their war making, in the sense that you didn't have special groups of British soldiers who went out and found Jews and slaughtered them, or you didn't have anything like the rape of Nanking, or you didn't have 10 to 15,000 Asians per week being killed in the last years of World War II by Americans and British in China and Korea and Formosa. That's one thing. And the other is magnitude.
And no attempt to make their own civilians commit mass suicide in the face of defeat. Right?
And
there wouldn't have been.
The other argument is more of a subtle one, and it involves magnitude, which I think Neil Ferguson didn't point out clearly enough, and that is that while there was this difference in the way that, and first of all, Hiroshima was really in reaction to the savagery of the island hopping campaign.
Right.
And people, remember, after Okinawa was declared secure and they looked back and saw 50,000 casualties, the popular American outcry at the end of the war, just 90 days later, was not, "We dropped the bomb." But surely you must have, if you exploded it in mid-July, you must have known it was there and you could have avoided Okinawa. Right. So the point that I'm making is its magnitude.
You're speaking to the son of a man who was on a ship just off Okinawa and watching kamikaze pilots.
My grandfather, my namesake, was killed there. So the point that I'm making is that the fact that in retaliation, to stop atrocity, that the Allies engaged in types of activities that killed a lot of people doesn't make it the moral equivalent of people who would have done far worse, only they didn't have the access to the technology or the material resources.
There is some very unpleasant stuff, though. If you read the conversations of Charwell and Lindemann and the advisors to Churchill on area bombing, they say, "We recommend that you bomb the working class areas of Hamburg because the houses are closer together, the people are packed more tightly. You'll get more deaths per bomb." And remember, these are the areas of Germany that never voted for Hitler. Hitler, I think I'm right in saying, that barely even visited Hamburg, even when he was chancellor, because he knew he was hated there. It was a socialist working class city. It's horrible to think, when we ask our rather smug question, what happened to all the good Germans during the terrible period of Nazism? Well, a lot of them were being killed by the RAF.
Nagasaki, by the way, was the center of Catholicism in Japan.
Yes.
Took out the one place where there actually a large concentration of Christians in Japan. However, we have ratified this. There is a fundamental moral distinction to be observed, and to miss it is obtuse. That is to say, all three of us agree that Mr. Rush Limbaugh is correct.
Yes, I think
This time I have to say so, yes.
And
Actually, it's rather,
Got it.
it's phrased in a rather spirited way, too.
Well, that you can count on him for.
Ask yourself that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Imagine a Japanese victory and a German victory in 1945, and ask what Europe and Asia would look like today vis-a-vis what they do look like today, and why is there a probable difference?
Let me take Neil Ferguson's second point that Ferguson makes.